Wouldn't this be the coolest tier set of all time? Well, guess what? It's not. Instead, Blizzard gave us a freaking skirt. I don't know about you, but I'd like to look like the badass Unholy Scourge Lord that I'm supposed to be. Who would even be intimidated by a Death Knight charging in wearing a plate skirt? What the hell even is a plate skirt? How would you be able to move wearing something like that? Anyways, enough of that. Let's get on with going over the gearing for the next raid phase. I'll go over our stat priority as Unholy, our pre-raid BIS going into release on the 31st, our tier 14 BIS, and the best alternatives to hold you over until you get your BIS. And if you haven't already, make sure to go check out my other guides for Unholy, where I covered all the basics, our rotation, and talents going into MoP, both linked here. And if you find any of these guides helpful, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to see more DK content as I continue to release it. But before we get into it, it's important to understand our stat priority for gearing. Strength is obviously our most valuable stat. Then we need to make sure we have 7.5% hit and 7.5% expertise. This will be exactly 2550 in each when we're at level 90. Then we will prioritize crit, then haste, and finally mastery. Disclaimer though, this is just from what we have found to be true with the current state in the Unholy Sim. The APL for Unholy is still being constantly worked on and tweaked, so this can change as the sim is perfected down the line. But that's what we know for now. Pre-BIS. Here's what I've determined from running the sim to be our pre-raid BIS. This will be the best available gear we have access to before Mogushon Vaults releases on July 31st. Our best professions for pre-raid are engineering and alchemy. We get a 476 helm, reinforced retinal armor with cogwheel slots, which will help us in getting to hit cap since we're lacking in the hit department on our pre-raid gear. But if you don't have engineering, your best alternatives would be Sightfinder Helm, which you can get from the Dungeon Siege in Izal Temple, or Meteoric Great Helm from Mogushon Palace. They sound about the same, so either would be fine. Alchemy being the second best profession, simply because of how powerful the trinket is. The Zen Alchemist Stone is very powerful for a 458 item, and you won't replace it until you get Lishen's final orders from Heroic Will of the Emperor. It's about a 3k DPS difference between the Alchemy Trinket and Carbonic Carbuncle from Swordsop Brewery, which is our second best trinket option. So if you choose not to go Alchemy though, Blacksmithing is the next best profession to go with. It's also worth noting that the 476 weapon and neck only have about a 0.4% chance of dropping, so you may want to plan around getting the next best alternatives for those. The Cloudstrike Pendant from Shadowpan Monastery will be your next best neck, and the Gleaming Ravager from Scarlet Halls is your next best weapon, with the expertise bonus from axes as an orc. Gore-Soaked Head Reaper is a close second from Salamence. For reputation items, you will want to focus on earning Honored with the Golden Lotus, so you can get the Stone Toe Spalders and Ring of the Golden Stair. Since we'll only have 3200 Valor going into release, these are the best two items we can grab. They provide the most DPS, and they aren't going to be replaced immediately by anything we can get from Mogushon Vaults. For items you can buy or craft yourself, the Ghost Reaver's Breastplate and Gauntlets are a major upgrade over their dungeon counterparts. But if you're broke and you can't afford them, Hate Shatter Chest Piece from Shadowpan Monastery and Dark Blaze Gauntlets from Solomance are your best alternatives. If you're willing to do some PvPing, we can get up to 4,000 Conquests to grab some good upgrades in Malevolent Gladiator's Girdle of Accuracy and Dreadplate Leggards. But if you don't like PvP or you can't put the time in to grind them out, your dungeon alternatives to these would be Grenadier's Belt from Gate of the Setting Sun and Commanding Bracers from Scarlet Halls. If you can't afford to get the Dark Moon Trinket Relic of Zuin, your next best option would be to use Carbonic Carbuncle or Lessons of the Dark Master if you don't have the Alchemy Trinket. I've included a link in the description to a spreadsheet I've already done listing all the options for pre-raid items and how they stack against each other. I ran all sims at 100,000 iterations to be as accurate as possible. Note though that the numbers may not be exact with upgrades to the sim, but it gives you enough of the general picture of what your other options are. I also have T14 BIS on there as well. Speaking of, here's our tier 14 BIS. The first thing you may notice is that we are not using tier shoulders. We will use the shoulder pads of Misshapen Life instead, and take tier on our other 4 slots to get the 4-piece set bonus. Our 4 set bonus is a little lackluster and boring in my opinion, with it just giving us an additional 10% haste to our Unholy Frenzy. Our 2 set bonus is also a small boost with 4% additional damage to our Scourge Strikes. But if your guild is struggling with a Heroic Shell of Fear, you could take tier shoulders and use the Nullification Great Helm from Fang. At some point in the phase, there will be a world boss available called Galleon, who drops 496 gear that can be used as some catch-up options or placeholders until you get some gear from Heart of Fear or Terrace. The list of items he drops is here. The Necklace of Congealed Weakness is BIS for your neck until Terrace drops, depending on whether Blizzard decides to release Heart of Fear separately from Terrace. It's also nice if your guild struggles with killing protectors on Heroic Elite, similar to the hardbow from World of War, for the 516 neck. For belts, Waist Plate of Overwhelming Assault is pretty much just as good as War Belt of Sealed Pods, so you really have 2 belt options. And then Patroller's Girdle of Endless Spring is actually a 3rd option if your guild has a lot of plate wearers, or you have some terrible luck with the other 2 dropping from Heart of Fear. For other trinket options, the Iron Belly Walk Valor trinket from being honored with the Shadow Pan isn't really worth it. Spend your Valor on something else. Both the Zen Alchemist Stone and Relic of Zuin are 4 to 6k DPS increases over that one. Also, the Jade Charioteer figurine from the MSV trash is also worse than our Pre-BIS, according to the current state of the Sims. But in nearly every gear slot, we have an alternative 489 Valor option if MSV isn't dropping any of the 502 upgrades you need for any particular slot. Here's a full list of all the Valor options and the rep required for each of them. The Bloodforged Warfists and Ornate Battleplate of the Master are both nice craftable upgrades from blacksmithing if you still need a chest or gloves upgrade after a few weeks of MSV. The blacksmithing plans can be dropped by all the bosses in MSV and some of the trash. Again, the link to the full list and how other gear stacks for each slot is linked below in the description. And that covers it for today's video. If you have any questions, feel free to comment them below or join the Unholy Discord with a link in the description. Thanks for watching. God bless.